Order, order. Under the order of the House of today, I must now put the questions necessary to dispose of proceedings on the motion. I begin by calling the...
Amendment A to be put to the House.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment A be made. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
It's the
of the contrary,
UK
no.
withdrawal from the EU debate.
Division!
And we're going to listen to quite a bit of stuff that's going on down in Westminster, and then we're going to come to each of the amendments in turn, and we'll see how people vote on it down there. Okay, so this is the first amendment, Amendment A, and it's to do with to negotiate with the EU for changes to the political declaration to secure a permanent and comprehensive customs union with the EU. The second part of this is a close alignment with the single market, underpinned by shared institutions and obligations. Then we've got the third part is dynamic alignment on rights and protections. And the fourth part is commitments on participation in EU agencies and funding programs, including in areas such as the environment, education and industrial regulation. And the fifth part is unambiguous agreement on the detail of future security arrangement, including access to the European arrest warrant and vital shared databases. Now, this seems to me, when I read it, to be what we already have already with the membership that we have of the EU. But this amendment's been tabled by Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer, Emily Thornberry, John MacDonald, Valerie Vaz, Nicholas Brown, Ben Bradshaw and Ruth George. It's quite interesting. I don't know if any of you have ever been into the Westminster Parliament, but it's quite an old-fashioned place, really. When you go around, there's lots of bits that were never finished because there wasn't enough money to finish them, and all the MPs go into this very small corridor and have to pass by and be seen to be passing by to have their votes counted. One would have thought that maybe in this day and age we would have updated that system, but not so. I'm not really quite sure how this particular amendment will go down. It's very difficult because there's actually an amendment to the amendment. Vince Cable, Tom Brake, Joe Swinson, Alistair Carmichael and Edward Davey, Norman Lamb, Christine Jardine, Tim Farron, Jamie Stone, Layla Moran, and Wira Hobhouse have also put this to it, that an extension of the period of 2 years specific in Article 50, bracket 3 of the Treaty on European Union for the purposes of a referendum on whether to exit the European Union under the terms of the negotiated withdrawal agreement or stay in membership of the European Union. There's several other amendments to come by. Of course, there's Ian Blackford's one a bit later on, but we'll come to that as it goes. It looks like some of the MPs have... Yeah, we got this, if I can find it, there's a lot of papers here today. We've got, let me have a look here. We've got a press release here, and this is what Ian Blackford had to say. We might repeat this again later. SNP amendment to the rule out no deal Brexit under any and all circumstances. I'll read that again. SNP amendment to rule out no deal Brexit under any and all circumstances. MPs must force untrustworthy Theresa May to do the right thing on Brexit. The SNP has tonight tabled an amendment to Theresa May's Brexit motion requiring that the Prime Minister be immediately rule out a no-deal Brexit under any and all circumstances and regardless of the exit date. Yes, as I said before, it's quite amusing to go into the Houses of Parliament. You come in all through the security and into the Great Hall, and they tell you about Henry VIII playing tennis there, and it is a huge, great big place, and it is actually quite awe-inspiring when you look up at the great rafters. And then when you come up the steps and into the lobby that you often see correspondents speaking to politicians in. And there's a post office there where the parliamentarians can send their mail for free all over the place, and they do take advantage of that. And why not? It's a service that is offered to them, and they do send out to their constituents. And when you go into the chamber itself, it's very small, really. When you think that there's 66 odd million people in the UK, and there's only 650 parliamentarians in that Commons chamber. When I went round it, I was told I wasn't allowed to sit down. It was not the right thing. You had to stand. You weren't allowed to touch anything, of course. But it was very fascinating to see just behind the Speaker's chair there was a bag there where you could put petitions and all the little cubby holes and the little nooks and crannies. And then we were led through the division lobby, which is just really enough space for 2 lines of people to walk through. I mean, of course, you saw recently where one of the MPs had to postpone her cesarean section so she could come to the Parliament and actually be seen to be voting. And you'll remember too that when Jo Swinson was on her maternity leave, there was a little bit of a problem there, because they do have a system where they can stop the voting. One person says, "I won't vote if you don't vote," and but that system's been sadly brought into disrepute when the person who was going to not vote when Jo Swinson was on her maternity leave did vote, and I'm not sure they've actually come to any sort of conclusion about that just yet. The Lords is a bit different. When you go in there, it's all red and gold. It does look magisterial, and it has a different feeling about it altogether. But then if you want to go into the Commons one day, maybe it's an interesting thing for you, you can go and sit in the gallery and watch. And that's a very different experience, because as you watch, you can look around the chamber And you can actually see the people playing on their telephones or dozing off, whereas the television cameras really only pick up on the people who are speaking. But it gives you an opportunity to see exactly how the place functions. And well, function it does, but maybe you should pick up on a few Mari Black videos on the YouTube channel and see how she feels that the place functions. And maybe it all needs an overhaul. But certainly they're pursuing at the moment a refurbishment of the whole palace. They're dealing with Big Ben at the moment. But I was interested this morning to see in the news in China, they've built enormous great skyscrapers, and then they've laid a new skyscraper across the top. And you think, they're going to spend a lot of money on the Westminster Palace doing it up, and wonder maybe would it be better to move into the 21st century and create something new? I don't know. Well, maybe you could put your answers on a postcard and send them in, see what you think. Anyway, the chamber's definitely much fuller now. So I started to read this thing from Ian Blackford, and let's read a bit more. The SNP Westminster leader has this evening written to all Scottish Tory and Labour MPs asking them to join the SNP in standing up for Scotland's interests by voting for the amendment to prevent lasting harm of a no-deal Brexit, which would inflict on jobs and living standards. Analysis has shown that any form of Brexit would have a damaging effect on Scotland's economy. A report by the Scottish Government's top economic advisor published last week revealed a no-deal Brexit could result in a recession worse than 2008, causing Scotland's gross domestic product, the GDP, to fall by 7% and lead to unemployment rising to around 100,000. Now, if you can just think to yourself when you've listened to news reports when they're advertising the great growth that's happened in a country just recently, they might boast about 1.75% increase, and we're talking here of a decrease of 7%. I mean, it's quite a lot, really quite a lot. Ian Blackford said here that Theresa May cannot be trusted, so Parliament must take control and force the UK government to do the right thing by immediately ruling out no-deal Brexit under any and all circumstances. Leaving the EU with either Theresa May's bad deal or with no deal at all is a false choice and would be devastating for Scotland. And if you recall too, the MEP, Alan Smith, with others, went to the European Court, and it is quite possible under the Article 50 for this Article 50 just to be stopped. All Theresa May has to do is to write a letter to Jean-Claude Juncker and say, look, we've made a mistake, let's stop this now. You surely are aware that the most important thing for any government, and the first responsibility of any government, is to protect its people. And one has to ask the question, is this a protection of the people of Scotland? Scottish Tory and Labour MPs must finally join the SNP in standing up for Scotland's interests by voting for this amendment and taking the disastrous no-deal Brexit off the table once and for all. Parliament can no longer... we're getting to the point now where we're going to have a tally of the votes, I think. If we look at the screen, see the MPs mulling around in the doorway there. And this is democracy at work. Of course, in days gone by, they used to sit all night on things like this. But I think that was found to be rather unsocial and difficult for families. We've got a few more minutes before they actually get themselves together. So back to this thing here. Parliament can no longer allow Theresa May to... All the tellers are lined up.
Order.
The ayes to the right, 240. The noes to the left, 323.
So this then has been defeated, this motion from Germany, quite substantially too.
240. The noes to the left, 323. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock.
The noes have it. Unlock. Yes. So that's a big defeat for Jeremy Corbyn.
And Loch Arbour. To move Amendment K, which stands in his name, I call the Right Honourable Gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Formally move Amendment K.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment K be made. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no.
It's a substantial aye.
Clear the lobby.
So Ian Blackford's amendment will be voted upon now, and so we're going to have about 15 minutes to go through all of that, and I'm just trying to find the amendment here. Do excuse us because this is an ongoing situation, and we couldn't plan for any of it because some of the motions or the amendments were actually cancelled just as we came on air. Now, Ian Blackford's Amendment K, this is with Ian Blackford and Liz Saville-Roberts, Caroline Lucas from the Greens, and Stephen Graffins and Tom Blake, Patrick Gurdy. And the amendment reads as this. Don't take them in. That this House is determined not to leave the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and a future framework under any circumstances and regardless of the exit date. Yes, it's. I mean, there's been a lot of other things, of course, happening today in the world. You may have seen that the Macron report has been published in full by the national newspaper, and that's quite a read. And on the same day as this has been reported, also in the news is the UK's richest man, who's invested £1 billion in the facilities of the pipeline to bring oil from the North Sea into Cruden Bay, and to have all the facilities there upgraded. So there's obviously still quite a lot of oil up in the North Sea, and I think they're even planning to find some more. So that's a huge, great big story. And interesting too, Mr. Ratcliffe is a Brexiteer, and he's actually decided to go and live back in, he's gone to live in Monaco. And if you may recall, back in 2017, there was fury about Jim Ratcliffe actually taking control of the oil and gas pipelines back then. So he's a continuing controversial kind of character. But then I suppose you would be if you were the richest man.
The question is that Amendment K be made. As many as other bit say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. Tell us for the ayes. Mrs. Marion Fellows, Mr. David Linden. Tell us for the noes. Amanda Milling and Craig Whitaker.
All right. So off they go again. And I suppose it must keep these guys fit, mustn't it? Walking up and down the corridors, and why not? I beg your pardon? Yes, of course. I'm sorry, I was listening to something in my ear then. Of course, the Scottish Parliament is a modern place, and they have little buttons to do the voting, and it's very quick, very easy. And another thing, of course, blockchain voting. I don't know if you've heard of this. There's something the Swiss government are are coming to look at, and many other governments too. In fact, the Swiss Stock Exchange are thinking about that as well at the moment. So maybe we need to move on and move up. Right. Okay. So we need to talk. Okay, and the Labour Party's anti-Semitism round continues to rumble on. Chris Williamson has apologised for saying the party had given too much ground over the issue, and I think they've now suspended him. The problems in India and Pakistan continue to rumble on, with both parties claiming to have shot down aeroplanes, and then there's another awkward story, as we had last night, but this one's in Leeds in West Yorkshire, where 9 people have been jailed for abusing girls in care homes. Another terribly sad story. And actually, just a few hours ago, in Surrey, down in the south of England, there was an earthquake. I wonder if we'll see any earthquakes in the Parliament tonight. It was a series of tremors, and it occurred 2 kilometres below the surface near Newdigate in Surrey. Here we're coming up to the... Yeah, I'll keep watching the screen to see what's happening in the Parliament. They've... There's another thing here. There's obviously immigration and people migrating illegally. There's another boat being captured with 9 migrants intercepted off the Kent coast this morning. And of course, that's nothing to do with, nothing like they have going across the Mediterranean Sea. What else have we got here? Yeah, we must find a bit of our Scottish news here. So we've got, there was last year there was an Orange Order march that passed by a Catholic church, and during the march a man spat at one of the people from the church, the priest there. This man from the Orange Order was called Bradley Wallace. He was 24, and he assaulted Canon Thomas White, and has today been sentenced to a jail term. I think it was 10 months. And then we've just discussed Mr. Radcliffe, and there's a little story here. The number of bus journeys in Scotland fell by 100 million over a decade. Now, I wonder if that's because the bus services have declined, or the people who want to travel by bus have declined. Also, of course, in Edinburgh, they built a tram system, so it would be interesting to delve into the figures a wee bit here and see exactly what this story is actually trying to tell us. But the latest Scottish Government transport data show that there were 3 million vehicles, motor vehicles, registered in Scotland, and by the end of 2017, and that contributed to a 31% rise in traffic since 1995. Oh, and this was a fun story from the other day. I don't know if you heard this one, but there was a lady who came back from Australia, and when she unpacked her luggage, in her shoe she found a snake. It wasn't a dangerous snake, but she managed to cover the animal with a shoebox, and the SSPCC came along and managed to take it away. No one was hurt, not even the snake. but it was. It may have been in a shoe for quite a few weeks, apparently. But then I suppose snakes and shoes might go together. So, yeah, we're going to take a little look and see inside the Commons chamber in Westminster now. All right, so we're still looking at the House chamber down in Westminster, and the MPs have been through on Ian Blackford's amendment K about not leaving the EU with no deal under any circumstances, and it'd be interesting to see how this comes by, because it's a very, very important vote, and important for all of us. The tellers are lining up in front of the mace now. There's the four of them.
Order!
The ayes to the right, 288. The noes to the left, 324.
So, what does that mean?
The ayes to the right,
that was defeated.
288. The noes to the left, 324. Thank you. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock.
So Ian Blackford's amendment to save us from this calamity is now been defeated by a substantial margin.
Moved. Amendment C not moved. Thank you. We now come to Amendment
Caroline
B.
Spellman had an amendment too, but that's not going to be moved now.
South Leicestershire. To move formally the amendment which stands in his name, I call Mr. Alberto Costa.
Costa.
To move formally, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that Amendment B be made. As many as are that opinion say aye.
Alberto Costa's been in the news today because he's lost his job.
Ayes have it. And we now come to Amendment F.
Okay, so that's been accepted, that amendment, and but he's had to give up his job. Well, there was a dispute whether he'd been sacked or whether he left the job, but David Mundell sent praise.
Formally.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment F be made. As many as are that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no.
So they're going to have this amendment by Alberto Costa. That's going to come up in a little while. Oh, they approved Alberto Costa's amendment without any division. Enough people shouted for it. I'll read it out so you know what they're shouted for. That this House notes that the Prime Minister's statement on leaving the European Union 26 February 2019 and further notes and discussions between the UK and the EU are ongoing and requires the Prime Minister to seek at the earliest opportunity joint UK and EU commitment to adopt Part 2 of the withdrawal agreement on citizens' rights and to ensure its implementation prior to the UK's exiting the European Union, whatever the outcome of the negotiations on other aspects of the withdrawal agreement. And now we move on to F, which is Yvette Cooper's amendment, and she's with Sir Oliver Lepwing and Dame Caroline Spellman, Jack Dorothy and Nick Bowles and Hilary Benn. And this amendment says this, that this House and further notes in particular the commitment of the Prime Ministers made in this House to hold a second meaningful vote by 12th March, and if the House, having rejected leaving with a deal negotiated with the EU, then rejects leaving on the 29th of March without a withdrawal agreement and future framework, the government will, on 14th March, bring forward a motion on whether Parliament wants to seek as limited extension to Article 50. And if the House votes for an extension, to seek agree and that extension approved by the House with the EU and bring forth the necessary legislation to... That's it. So we've got all that done, and they're going to vote upon that.
Of the contrary, no. Tell us for the ayes, Nick Daking and Bambos Charalambus. Tell us for the noes, Mr. Peter Bone and Sir Christopher Chope.
All right, so while they're out there milling around and going to vote on this other amendment, there's a little bit of news from Historic Environment Scotland, and they've reported an increase of footfall. 5,229,049 people visiting its staff sites in 2018, a 5% increase on the previous year. The most visited site was the Edinburgh Castle with 2,11,578 visitors. Stirling Castle was second top visited, and that's 600,000 or so visitors went there. Urquhart Castle over in Loch Ness was followed by 500,000 people, a little bit more than 500,000 people, and 3 or 4 of them saw Nessie as well. The site's been featured in the TV show The Outlander, and it's seen record-breaking numbers. The Black Ness Castle reaching 50,000 visitors this time. And there's been an increase of 36% on the previous year there, but while Dunoon Castle and Craigmillar Castle have also experienced increased footfall. So it's good for the Scottish tourist industry, and Historic Environment Scotland are happy to announce all that stuff. There's a little quote here from Stephen Duncan, the director of the Commercial and Tourism, said, 2018 was another fantastic year for Scotland's heritage sites, with visitor numbers continuing to grow, as well as the Outlander effect, bringing international visitors to Scotland to explore its rich history, and having also seen an increase in the number of Scots visiting heritage sites as evidence of our highest ever membership figure, with Scotland being used as a filming location for productions such as The Outlaw King, all about Robert the Bruce, and Mary Queen of Scots. We hope visitors will continue to be inspired and explore the history of the sites as they see on the big screen. Oh, that's a really nice piece of news, and this press release goes on to say that there are 77 staffed Historic Scotland attractions. Okay, so we'll move on from Historic Scotland, and the next thing I've got in my pile is employees encouraged to put fair work first. There's a range of measures to support employers to embed fairer work practices and set out a new Fair Work Action Plan. Building on the First Minister's Fair Work First announcement last year, the action plan includes a commitment to a new benchmarking tool to help employers access their current practices and to provide guidance on how to make their workplaces fairer. A refreshed Scotland Business Pledge, more clearly aligned with the Fair Work principles, has also been launched. In response to the feedback from business, and a reinvigorated Business Pledge retains payment of the real living wage as its core commitment, while offering a more tailored approach to meet individual business needs, and includes the environmental impact for the first time. A new learning network led by a business group that will drive skills and promotion, and is also being set up to better support the businesses and achieve the Business Pledge. Other commitments to the Fair Work Action Plan include a media manager. Sorry, I beg your pardon, the pages have got slipped. I think we'll just leave that as it stands because it sounds good, and that was just really fine. Now, I've just been handed another piece of paper to read Amendment F again. And this, it says, Now, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused where this piece of paper should start. Do I read above the line or below the line? Below the line. Amendment, Yvette Cooper, Oliver Letwin, and Dame Carol Spillman, Jack Doherty, Nick Bowles and Hilary Benn. Further notes in the particular the commitment of the Prime Minister made in this House to hold a second meaningful vote by 12th March, and if the House, having rejected leaving with a deal negotiated with the EU, it then rejects leaving on 29th of March without a withdrawal agreement and future framework, the government will, on the 14th of March, bring forward a motion on whether Parliament wants to seek a short limited extension to Article 50, and if the House votes for an extension, seek to agree that extension approved by the House with the EU and bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. It is all very complicated and very confusing, I think, because this is fine detail that I suppose many people pay politicians to deal with. It's the kind of thing like paying your accountant to do your books because you don't want to get involved with all the tax codes and get it wrong. You could be also an accountant who you pay and he makes a mess of it, or she makes a mess of it, of course. Let's, while they're still going through the lobby, there's an article here about the Justice Secretary and his comments on new hate crime statistics. This is Cabinet Secretary for Justice, Hamza Youssef, and he's commented on the new hate crime statistics. The tellers are coming back into the Commons chamber, but I think I can probably read you a bit more of this while we're waiting. And we're going to hold that till afterwards, okay? So now we're going to see this, the result of the vote on that amendment I just read out, the one that's marked F with Yvette Cooper being the main sponsor of this particular item. Yes, I mean it's another important amendment, and there's probably a good opportunity for this one actually to get past. The two previous votes, if you've just joined us, have been rejected. That was Ian Blackford's amendment to stop a withdrawal altogether in its tracks. And the other one was by Jeremy Corbyn, who was trying to introduce all his, really the Labour Party policy of staying within the customs union. And then there was another amendment by Abel Costa, which was actually decided upon without a division at all. It was just on a shout in the House of aye or nay. Yeah, and this particular amendment actually also almost went by just on a shout from the House, but there was a little query, so they sent them through the division lobbies to see. I'll read it out again. Further notes on the particular the comment of the Prime Minister made in this House on this to hold a second meaningful vote on the 12th of March. If this House, having rejected leaving with the deal negotiated with the EU, it then rejects leaving on the 29th without a withdrawal agreement. So if they voted to reject the deal that Mrs May has put before Parliament on the other time when it was defeated, a huge margin, and she's going to bring it back on the 12th of March. If that doesn't go through, then so if this one passes, then it has an effect upon the other. It has an effect on Theresa May's original motion, and that'll be next on the 12th of March, I think. In some ways you might think it takes a long way, but it's actually, they do have to walk a good few feet out of the building, and not out of the building, but out into the corridor and around in the lobby, and they have to walk back. And then, of course, it's a bit like an army. If one person's a half a second behind one other person, then by the time you get to the back of 600 of them, it's quite a few minutes gone. Chaotic, anarchaic, maybe, but then there are others who like tradition and stability. And that's really the division of our lives these days. Everything is 50-50. Half people want this and half people want that. It was actually a very interesting day, and we were treated to lunch in the cafe, or the restaurant, I should probably say, in the House of Commons, which was very nice actually, a nice meal, and people were very pleasant to us, and actually we were allowed to go onto the terrace and look across the river at St Thomas's Hospital. I was told I wasn't really allowed to go out there, but they would close their eyes and keep a blind eye to it. So it was a very interesting experience, and to see the seat of government as it is for the UK, but of course a very different prospect from our Holyrood Parliament. So there's quite a crowd in the doorway now, as Andrew Mitchell on his phone to the right of the screen with his greying hair. Andrew, of course, he got into a lot of trouble a while ago with the plebs outburst at the policeman who guarded number 10. But that seems to have been got over. And he paid all the bills for the legal things. And there's David Mundell to the left, our Scottish secretary, who had to say goodbye to his personal assistant, Mr. Costa, today. Obviously, if you put an amendment towards a government bill, then she can't stay within that government structure anymore, so he obviously had to give up his post. Yeah, and he's an Italian Scot, so he was born in Scotland. His parents were Italian. There were a lot of Italians. In fact, there is a statistic that says that 2% of Scots actually can trace blood back to Italy. Many people came up from Italy when there was a depression there during the two world wars, and they sold ice cream. You may know the old call, which was Okey Pokey Dollar a Dolp, and the pokey hat was the cornet. If you go to Oban, there's an ice cream shop there called the Pokey Hat, just by the harbour there, and you find some of the greatest ice cream in the world here in Scotland. I should say that many of those companies are Italian people, and I've actually enjoyed many ice creams. I could actually give you a whole list of the shops. Maybe we should do a programme about the great ice cream shops of Scotland. Get us away from the politics a wee bit, and lighten the spirit of the thing, because a lot of this Brexit stuff has been really quite frightening, actually, when you consider what's been happening and the effects that stopping 70 years of agreements and all the different trade deals, and it's just quite extraordinary. The European Union has been going for 70 years. Okay, it's had various different incarnations, but all these different things have been building up over this time. Of course, the UK joined 40 odd years ago, but a thing that often strikes me as missing from this debate is that people often blame the EU as if it's a separate organisation, when the UK has been an integral part of the EU for all this time. So here we come to the next division on the Yvette Cooper. Two of the tellers are standing in line, and the other two will be here in a moment. Four gentlemen this time.
Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 502. The noes to the left, 20.
520. 502
The
to
ayes
20.
to the right, 502. The noes to the left, 20. So the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
So
Unlocked.
that's an enormous defeat
Order.
for
The
the
question
government.
is the motion as amended. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. We come now to motion number 5, the Joint Committee on the Draft Domestic Abuse Bill. The whip to move.
So we've come to the end of the Brexit amendments, and Jeremy Corbyn's amendment was defeated. Jeremy Corbyn's amendment really was to try and put Labour Party policy on the EU. He really wanted us to stay within a customs arrangement, to keep close alignment and keep all the protections which we already enjoyed because of the membership to the European Union, but that was totally rejected. Yeah, so we've got things coming up then in the pipeline, and the so-called meaningful vote, which will be Parliament's opportunity to take another look at Mrs May's deal, the deal that really started at Chequers quite some time ago, the deal that caused Boris Johnson and various other people to leave the government, and David Davis, of course, and that has rumbled on, and then it's been taken to the EU, and they've cobbled the agreement from that, but this backstop has been the thing that has been the problem because of Ireland. Right. So now this amendment F by Yvette Cooper. So. The Prime Minister made a statement in the House to hold a second meaningful vote by the 12th of March. And if the House, having rejected leaving with the deal negotiated with the EU, then rejects leaving on the 29th of March without a withdrawal agreement, the future framework and government will, on the 14th of March, bring forward a motion on whether Parliament wants to seek a short, limited extension to Article 50. And if the House votes for an extension, seek to agree that extension approved by the House with the EU and bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. So quite a lot to take in there. And but that was a very, very big defeat for Mrs May's government. But she seems to be like the duck. And water just seems to trip off her back. She doesn't seem to make any difference, and she is a single-minded person, which is maybe a compliment for Mrs May. It certainly takes a lot of guts and courage to deal with all this stuff. So I wonder where we're going from here. Who knows? I mean, really, it's still in the lap of the gods, isn't it? The whole thing. But we really don't want to leave all these agreements and go nowhere. Now, I've been here for 3 nights, and I hope I haven't put you off, and I hope that you appreciate that what we do here in Broadcasting Scotland is done on with only a very small amount of people. I think that the studio we work from is absolutely fantastic. I've worked in television many years, but it is a small team to do what the BBC and STV do with an enormous great team, and yet we've managed to cover a lot of big stories this week, and we're still teething, I would say. Now, tomorrow night you're in for a treat, because a friend of mine and a man who does his own TV show is coming to take the seat, and his name is Gordon Ross. He's got a lot of fans out there, and I hope you'll tell everybody to come and watch him, because I know you'll get a lot of good things from him tomorrow. And if you let me, I'll come back in a little while and take the seat again and see if we can get things even better. So thanks very much for watching tonight. Hope it wasn't too chaotic, and we'll see you again shortly. Bye-bye.